Johnny Talk Sports in with my Week 14 NFL predictions. Last week I went a solid 9-5, which puts me at 120 and 73 and 1 on the season so far, with about 5 weeks left of the NFL regular season. So without further ado, let's get to the Week 14 NFL predictions. As always, we begin with Thursday Night Football, and this week it features the Steelers and the Vikings. And this one feels like a tough one to call. I do feel like on paper this is going to be one of the better matchups we have had on Thursday night this season, but I don't think it's going to be the best one. We have the Steelers coming off of a emotional win against the Ravens last week, a huge AFC North showdown. Well, the Vikings, they're coming off of a heartbreaking loss last week to the Lions, and the Lions got their first win of the year last week. And Dalvin Cook is expected to be out again for the Vikings this week. Adam Thielen is questionable, but I'm not sure if he's going to play either. So the Vikings will be down Dalvin Cook and possibly Adam Thielen as well. So I am going to actually, even though Cook and Thielen, well, Cook is expected to be out, but Thielen, he might be out as well. I am going to actually go with the Vikings to win this game. Because the Vikings, they were embarrassed last week. They were heartbroken last week. To lose to the winless Lions last week, to give them their first win of the year, they are going to play the chip on their shoulder on Thursday night. And I think it's going to be a very close game, but I'm going to pick the Vikings to win by a score of 27-24. Next, we have the Ravens and the Browns. And these teams faced off a couple weeks ago in prime time on Sunday night. And it came down to which team ran the football the best, and that was the Ravens. However, I think this time we're going to see a lot more points on the scoreboard than what we saw in the game a couple weeks ago. The Ravens, they're coming off a heartbreaking loss to the Steelers, where the Ravens, they had the chance to go to overtime, but they decided to go for two. They had the right play idea. It was just a dropped pass by Mark Andrews. And the Browns, well, we're starting to see if the Browns, if they are a serious contender this season like they were last year. But I think the Ravens, they end up sweeping the Browns in 2021. We're going to see a lot more points on the board in this game, but I just think the Ravens, this is really a bounce back game for them. While the Browns, they may be coming off of a bye, the Ravens, they are much hungrier for a win. Next, we have the Jaguars and the Titans, and this feels like a game where I just have to pick somebody. Even though the Titans have been clearly the better team all season long, their offense just seems to go nowhere without Derrick Henry, and we have seen that. However, we have also seen maybe a couple flashes of that Titans offense against the Patriots a couple weeks ago with that long run by Hilliard, but that was about it that the Titans had to show for an offense that day. And they are coming off of a bye, so I will pick them to win this game. I just feel like with them coming off of a bye, I think they just had a week to reestablish themselves as a legitimate contender in the AFC, and I think they win big against Jacksonville this weekend. Raiders-Chiefs. The Raiders, they had a heartbreaking loss last week to Washington, and the Raiders, they usually have a collapse in the second half of the year, and I feel like that was the start of it. A heartbreaking loss to Washington, then they go on the road to Kansas City to take on a team that their big problem at the beginning of the year was their defense, and their defense has been playing phenomenal in their last 3 games. So their defense is improving week by week. And Mahomes didn't have the best game on Sunday, but that's okay because his defense was able to carry him that game. So ultimately, I am going to go with Kansas City in this game. I think Mahomes has another big game against the Raiders this weekend, because I believe the last time they faced off about 3 weeks ago, I think Mahomes had 5 touchdown passes, and I think he will repeat that again this week. So I'm going with KC. Next, we have the Saints and the Jets. And this is another game where I just feel like I have to pick somebody. So I will just go with the more rested team, and that's the Saints. Because the Saints, they still got a pretty good defense, but it does have some inconsistencies. And we saw some of those against the Cowboys on Thursday night. So with them being the more rested team, I'm going to go with New Orleans in this game. The Jets, at least the Jets, they've been showing they're capable of winning games. They have wins over the Titans and the Bengals, who are contenders in the AFC. And they have a win against the Texans. So the Jets, they're doing much better than what I thought they would be doing at this point in the year. They've got a couple more wins than I thought they would have at this point. But I will pick the Saints. Moving on to the Cowboys and the Washington football team. Washington, they are on a 4-game winning streak, and we have seen their defense rise to the occasion in that 4-game winning streak. Because we had been waiting for it all season long for their defense to finally reach their full potential, and I think we're starting to see that. And now they have a big challenge in a very powerful Cowboys offense led by Dak Prescott. And the Cowboys, they had a dominant win on Thursday night last week against the Saints, which was the perfect response to a heartbreaking loss on Thanksgiving Day to the Raiders. And this one, I think, can go either way. I think if we see the Washington defense rise to the occasion again this week, if we can see them contain that pass game, because Amari Cooper came back in the lineup last week, CeeDee Lamb came back in the lineup last week, and with them on the field, that secondary is going to have their hands full. But I'm going to ultimately go with the Cowboys, mostly because of the rest that they are on, because they are the more rested team in this matchup with having a couple more days rest in this game. So I'm going to go with Dallas. Moving on to Atlanta and Carolina. And this is another showdown in the NFC South that took place earlier in the season, where the Panthers won 19-13. So a pretty low-scoring game in that one. And right now, both of these teams are in the playoff hunt at this point in the year, which honestly, that feels kind of surprising to say. The Panthers, they did get off to a 3-0 start, but they have just struggled ever since. Now McCaffrey's out for the year. Cam Newton got benched in their last game that they played. And I don't know why I'm doing this, but I am. I'm going to pick the Falcons in this game. And I remember saying earlier in the year, I don't know how many times I'm going to pick the Falcons to win a game. But this feels like one of those winnable games for the Falcons. I feel like this Falcons game this week is going to dictate the rest of their season. Because there was an article that came out that the Falcons, they can make the playoffs, but they just have to get hot right now. And you know what? I kind of questioned the article at first because with the way the Falcons have played all season, they do not even look close to a playoff team. But you know what? If they can start winning games, then maybe they can establish themselves as a potential playoff team. So I think the Falcons win this game, and I think if the Falcons, if they win this game, and if they can win the next one, then I think Calvin Ridley will come back. Because it's unknown if he's going to come back this season, but I feel like if the Falcons, if they can win this week, maybe next week as well, then I think Calvin Ridley will come back. So Falcons win this week. Moving on to the Seahawks and the Texans. And the Seahawks, they picked up a must-win last week against San Francisco. Now they go on the road to Houston. And I'm going to say this. The Seahawks, they will win this game. But the Texans will make them earn this one. Because I think the Seahawks, they will struggle in the first 3 quarters of the game. Because a West Coast team playing an early afternoon game, sometimes it doesn't translate well as far as success. They go through some struggles. This kind of reminds me of when they played the Dolphins last year early on in the day. They tended to struggle, but they got the win, but they had to earn it. And I think it's going to kind of have the same effect to that. So Seahawks win, but the Texans, they will surprisingly keep this close. Moving on to the Lions and the Broncos. The Lions got their first win of the year last week, while the Broncos, their defense, I would say, played really well against Kansas City, but their offense and their special teams, they really let them down. If the offense could have just stepped up, if the special teams could have stepped up, then that could have been a whole different ballgame. But you got to give credit where it's due. The Broncos defense, they played lights up. They just got let down by the offense. However, the best player on offense last week for the Broncos was clearly the rookie out of North Carolina, Javonte Williams, who had a phenomenal game last week. And I think with what we have seen out of Javonte Williams last week and in Week 12 against the Chargers, I think that Javonte Williams is going to take over this Broncos backfield. Melvin Gordon's status for this game is unknown. But if he's out, then Javonte Williams is going to step up, no doubt about it. I think the Broncos have a much better offensive performance this weekend against Detroit, and they will pick up the win. Next, we got the New York Football Giants and the LA Chargers. And what a game for the Chargers last week. A dominant performance against the Bengals. They did a really good job containing Joe Mixon last week. They also forced some turnovers. While the Giants, their defense played pretty encouraging against the Dolphins last week. But Daniel Jones is expected to be out. Mike Lennon expected to be out. So they're going to be coming into this game with Jake Fromm at quarterback. And I think the Chargers defense, I think they're going to absolutely feast on this opportunity to create turnovers in this game with a rookie quarterback making his first start. And I think the Chargers, they completely dominate the Giants. This won't even be a game. Although I will say that Keenan Allen, his status is unknown for this game because he was placed on the CV-19 list, but he did get the VAXX, so he might be able to play this week. Moving on to the 49ers and the Bengals, and for the 49ers, they're coming off a heartbreaking loss to the Seahawks last week. But what a performance by George Kittle. 9 catches, 181 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Impressive work for George Kittle last week, even though it was a losing effort. While the Bengals, they are coming off of a performance against the Chargers, one of their lowest performances of the year. As much as the Bengals have really topped their season expectations so far this season, they're kind of a night and day team because one week they will completely dominate against the Ravens, and the next week they'll lose the Jets, and then the Bengals, they'll win a game, and then they'll lose the Browns, then they'll win a game, and then they'll lose the Chargers. They'll get blown out by the Chargers, might I add. So it's unknown what to really think of the Bengals at this point. But I'm going to go with the 49ers in this game. Because the 49ers, they're starting to get fully healthy again. And when the 49ers, they are healthy, they are one of the more dangerous teams in the NFC. And they look like a much better team now that they're fully healthy. So I'm going to go with San Francisco. And George Kittle has been impressive since his return from IR, except for the one game where he only had 1 catch for 13 yards. But George Kittle he was still a big presence in that game because he was doing a great job blocking for Elijah Mitchell. So I expect the 49ers to have a big game against the Bengals. I think the 49ers win by at least 10 points. Next, we have the Bills and the Bucs in what is, without a doubt, the game of the week. The Bills are coming off of a 14-10 loss against New England on Monday Night Football, which isn't a bad loss or not a loss to really be ashamed of considering the circumstances. I think the Bills' defense, despite giving up those 14 points, they still played really well in that game. If you take away that long run by Damian Harris, I'd say the Bills' defense, they played pretty well because that would have taken off 8 potential points on the board. And now they go on the road to take on the Bucs. And the Bucs, they have been dealing with some injuries all season long. But I think this is around the time of the year where we see a Tom Brady-led team, whether it's the Patriots or the Bucs, where they start to get into full form and in full championship mode because the calendar has turned to the month of December. And that is when we see Tom Brady at his best. And I think the Bucs, they get the win in this game. I think this is going to be a shootout. I expect this to be a very high-scoring game. But in the end, I think the Bucs, I think they get the win here. Sunday Night Football now, the Bears and the Packers. And the Packers are coming off of a bye week, while the Bears, they continue to struggle this season. Matt Nagy on the hot seat, probably going to be fired at the end of the season. But I am going to go with the Packers here without a doubt. I mean, it's in Lambeau in December. Aaron Rodgers' favorite time of year, especially at Lambeau Field. I think the Bears dominate this game. I think Rodgers throws 5 touchdown passes. I think at least 2 of them are going to go to Devontae Adams. And the Packers pick up a big win on Sunday night. Dominant fashion. So going with Green Bay. Week 14 wraps up with Monday Night Football, the Rams and the Cardinals. And before last week's game against Jacksonville, the Rams, they struggled their last 3 games, losing 3 in a row. But I think with what we saw in the Green Bay game, I think we saw some flashes of a rebirth of that Rams offense coming into the season. I mean, Cooper Kupp is looking like the best receiver in the NFL. However, their first loss of the year was to this Cardinals team. And Kyler Murray came back from injury last week, and he put on a show. They dominated the Bears. So I think this game is going to be an offensive showdown as well. Despite the Rams having at least the defense with the most talent on it, where you have Von Miller, you got Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey all on one defense. But the Rams, they've still given up yards and points all season long. And the Cardinals, one of the more underrated defenses in the league, one of the defenses that we don't really talk about in the league because it does get overshadowed a bit by Kyler Murray. But Chase Edmonds is expected to come back off of IR this week. Whether he plays or not, even if he does play, I still think he's going to still be doing more of a split share carries with James Conner. That'll be a split backfield. But I'm going to pick the Cardinals to win this game. I just feel like with the Rams' MO throughout the entire season, it's they beat up on the weaker teams, but they just can't seem to beat the good ones. And that will do it for my Week 14 NFL predictions. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment your picks down below. And until next time, have a wonderful day.